Steelers Nation, Pittsburgh, stay sharp, because this goes beyond just another primetime game. This is about pride, accountability, and response. Inside that locker room, the atmosphere has changed. The tone of the conversations isn't the same anymore, and the silence after losses has turned into the sound of responsibility. This week, it's not about hype, it's about paying the price. It's about a defense that heard the criticism and now has to prove it still carries the weight of the name on its chest. Because when the foundation starts to crack, only those who truly believe stay standing. So before anything else, hit that like button, turn on the notifications, and drop a comment below. Do you still believe in this defense? Or is it time to change everything in Pittsburgh? The moment is now, because what happens on Sunday could redefine the entire course of this season. Something's brewing inside the Steelers facility this week, and it's not just another primetime matchup. As Pittsburgh prepares for Sunday Night Football against the Green Bay Packers, the conversation isn't about hype or headlines. It's about accountability, about a defense that's been called out, publicly and privately, and a coaching staff running out of excuses. Because after the loss to the Cincinnati Bengals, the tone inside the locker room shifted. The film sessions weren't quiet, and defensive coordinator Terrell Austin didn't dodge the criticism. When Austin took the podium, the message was blunt: we have to stop the run. That's it. No elaborate schemes, no smoke and mirrors. Just a direct admission that the foundation of this defense, a unit built on discipline and fundamentals, has started to crack. Austin pointed to players abandoning their assignments, chasing highlight plays instead of trusting their gaps. And when you watch the tape from Cincinnati, you see exactly that: defenders out of position, chasing ghosts, and leaving massive lanes for Chase Brown to exploit. Cam Hayward, the captain who rarely minces words, backed that up on his own podcast this week. He said it comes down to trust. Guys trying to do too much. Guys seeing too much and reacting to everything except their actual responsibility. Sometimes a 1 or 2 yard stop is money, Hayward said, and he's right. It's not about the splash plays, it's about consistency. That's how Pittsburgh has always built its defensive identity. But lately, too many defenders have been freelancing, and it's showing. For a few weeks earlier this season, it felt like the Steelers had turned a corner. The run defense looked dominant, shutting down some of the most physical rushing attacks in the AFC. Against Cleveland, they completely bottled up Quinton Judkins, something few teams have managed to do. But then came the Bengals game, and all that progress evaporated. The same issues that haunted this team early in the season reappeared: poor gap discipline, missed tackles, confusion in coverage, and a complete loss of rhythm. Still, the most concerning part of Austin's press conference wasn't his comments about stopping the run, it was what he didn't say about the secondary. Because let's be honest, the pass defense has been a real problem. Even when Joey Porter Jr. has been on the field, the Steelers have been exposed week after week by elite receivers. Jamar Chase shredded them. Justin Jefferson did the same earlier in the season. And when your defensive identity is built around stopping the pass with physical corners and smart safeties, you can't afford to be middle of the pack. Austin admitted that we all thought we'd be better at quarterback by now, but added that he still believes in his players. Mike Tomlin echoed that optimism, saying the group just needs time to bounce back. The question is, bounce back how? By continuing to play the same heavy man coverage that's left veterans like Darius Slay and Jalen Ramsey struggling against younger, faster wideouts? Or will Tomlin and Austin finally adjust their scheme to give this unit a fighting chance? Because the truth is, this defense has been asking too much of its corners in one-on-one matchups. These aren't 24-year-old burners anymore. They're veterans who excel when they can read, anticipate, and react with eyes on the quarterback. But when you force them into tight man coverage every snap, you're setting them up to fail. You can see it in the body language, in the hesitation at the line of scrimmage. It's not that they've lost their talent, it's that the system isn't playing to their strengths. Nick Farabaugh from Penn Live captured one of the most revealing moments of Austin's presser. When asked about his play calling against Cincinnati, Austin admitted that 2 explosive runs by Chase Brown completely changed the way I called the game, that he shrunk the menu on the back end to focus on stopping the run. Think about that. 2 bad plays, and the entire game plan was thrown out. The defense that had held the Bengals to back-to-back punts suddenly went into panic mode. The aggressiveness disappeared, and Joe Flacco and Jamar Chase took advantage of every inch of cushion they were given. That's not strategy. That's fear. And fear is the last thing you can afford when you're coaching a defense built on toughness. Instead of adjusting calmly, Austin tightened up, simplified his coverage calls, and made it easier for Cincinnati to dictate the tempo. That's the definition of living in your fears, exactly what Mike Tomlin warns his players not to do. Now, no one is saying that Austin is the sole problem, but when your defense is the most expensive in football, when your head coach is a defensive mind, and when you keep getting gashed by the same mistakes every week, you have to start asking hard questions. Has this staff lost confidence in its own plan? Or worse, are the players starting to lose confidence in them? Because that's the quiet concern bubbling under the surface in Pittsburgh right now. For the first time in years, fans are wondering if this coaching staff truly knows how to get the most out of its defensive stars. TJ Watt is playing through pain. Minkah Fitzpatrick has been forced to compensate for breakdowns around him, and guys like Hayward are left doing cleanup duty for teammates out of position. The chemistry just isn't clicking the way it used to. Even Darius Slay, on his appearance with Richard Sherman this week, gave fans a glimpse of what's happening behind closed doors. He said Tomlin wasn't sugarcoating anything after the Bengals' loss, that the head coach tore into the team during meetings. That's not new for Tomlin, but the fact that it needed to happen this deep into the season says a lot. The message was simple: accountability. Fix it now, or this season will slip away. And that brings us here, to the real question hovering over Pittsburgh this week. Can this coaching staff make the necessary adjustments before it's too late? Or will stubbornness and fear keep holding back a defense that, on paper, should be one of the best in the league? Because if we're being honest, Steelers Nation, this isn't just about one bad game. It's about a pattern of hesitation, inconsistency, and miscommunication that's slowly eroding what used to be the team's biggest advantage: identity. When the Steelers were at their best, you knew exactly what you were going to get from them: relentless pursuit, disciplined coverage, and a defense that dictated the tone from the very first snap. But lately, it feels like the opposite. The Steelers aren't setting the tone, they're reacting to it. Look back at how this defense was constructed. You've got household names: TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Cam Hayward, Patrick Queen, players with pedigree, pride, and production. These aren't guys who need to be motivated. They need direction. They need structure. And when that structure starts to wobble, even great players begin to press. That's what we're seeing right now. Everyone trying to do too much. Everyone trying to make the moment play instead of the right play. And that's where Mike Tomlin's leadership comes under the microscope. Nobody questions his control of the locker room. That's his superpower. He commands respect. But managing personalities and managing schemes are two different challenges. You can have the full trust of your roster and still fail to put them in the best position to succeed on Sundays. That's the fine line Tomlin is walking right now, because this is still his defense, his philosophy, his fingerprints on every decision. The frustrating part for fans is that we've seen glimpses of what this group can be when everything clicks. When the communication is sharp, when the pass rush and coverage are working in sync, they look like one of the top units in football. But those stretches have been fleeting. A few drives here, a single game there. And as the weeks go by, the inconsistency is no longer about execution. It's about design. Terrell Austin's decision to abandon his original game plan after those two Chase Brown runs was a turning point, not just in that game, but maybe in how this defense is being perceived. The players notice when their coach panics. They feel it. They play tighter. They stop trusting what's called. And that kind of doubt, once it creeps into a locker room, is hard to shake off. Now, the challenge isn't just fixing the scheme, it's restoring belief. You can't chart that on a whiteboard. It's about conviction, about having the guts to trust your preparation even when things start to go sideways. That's where Tomlin comes in. He's known for saying, "We don't live in our fears." Well, this defense is doing exactly that right now, and it's costing them games they should be winning. Here's the reality. Pittsburgh still controls its own destiny. The AFC North is brutal, but it's wide open. The Steelers' offense has shown flashes of rhythm with Jaylen Warren and George Pickens taking on bigger roles. If the defense can simply return to form, not elite, just stable, this team can still make a serious push. But that starts with accountability on the sideline, not just in the locker room. There's also the uncomfortable truth that's starting to creep into fan conversations, the T word, trade. And no, not trading players. Trading Mike Tomlin himself. It's not just social media noise anymore. Some fans, even analysts, have floated the idea that if Pittsburgh ends the year at 9-8 again, missing the playoffs despite fielding the most expensive defense in the NFL, maybe it's time to see what his market value could be. Because make no mistake, Tomlin would have one. A first-round pick, at least. That's how respected he still is around the league. But that's the debate that divides Steelers Nation. On one hand, you've got those who believe Tomlin's consistency and leadership are irreplaceable, that he's earned the right to fix this. On the other, you've got fans who are simply tired of the same storylines year after year: slow starts, mid-season struggles, late surges that fall just short. The question isn't whether Tomlin can coach, it's whether he can evolve. defensive veterans like Hayward and what aren't getting younger. Minka's patience won't last forever. And with so much money tied up in this side of the ball, the margin for error is shrinking. If the Steelers can't figure out how to marry their talent with their system, it won't matter how fiery Tomlin's speeches are behind closed doors. The results will speak louder. So as Pittsburgh gets ready to host Green Bay, this game isn't just about standings or playoff odds. It's about trust. Trust between coaches and players. Trust between fans and the organization. Trust that the standard, as Tomlin always says, is the standard, not just words on a banner. Because if this defense doesn't start playing like one of the highest paid units in football, the noise outside the building is only going to get louder. Steelers Nation, you've seen this team through every high and low. You know what greatness looks like in black and gold. So tell me, do you still believe this defense can rediscover its identity under Tomlin and Austin? Or do you think this season could be the breaking point that finally forces change in Pittsburgh? If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more daily Steelers coverage, and check out the other videos already on the channel. Your voice is what keeps this community going. Until next time, keep the faith, Steelers Nation. Here we go. And maybe that's what this moment really is, a crossroads, not just for this season, but for the identity of the modern Pittsburgh Steelers. Because for nearly 2 decades, this franchise has prided itself on being the one constant in an NFL that changes overnight. Same head coach, same defensive mindset, same standard, but when the results start to look the same breakdowns, the same post-game explanations, the same 9-8 endings, that consistency starts to feel less like stability and more like stagnation. It's not about pointing fingers, it's about evolution. Every great team has to reinvent itself at some point. The Patriots did it, the Ravens did it, even the 49ers, with all their talent, adjusted philosophies to keep pace with the league. The Steelers can't just rely on toughness and tradition anymore. The NFL is too fast, too smart, too ruthless. Schemes win games now just as much as effort does. And that's where Tomlin and Austin need to prove they can adapt. What fans want to see, what they need to